The blood on the warehouse floor was already dry when Harry Callahan knelt beside it, and 3 hours later, that same blood would be used to destroy him. Nobody in that room knew it yet. Not the uniforms taping off the scene. Not the coroner zipping the bag. Not even Harry, who stood up, wiped his hands on a rag, and said the name of the killer out loud before anyone else had even started guessing. Ray Kessler, Harry said. Lone shark. Works the docks. He did this. The lead detective on the case, a younger man named Torres, looked at him like he'd pulled the name out of thin air. How do you know that in 10 minutes? Because I've been chasing him for 6 years, Harry said. And because nobody else ties a garrote like that. 2 days later, Harry had Kessler in an interrogation room, no lawyer yet, sweating through his shirt. I want a deal, Kessler said. You're not getting one, Harry said. You're getting a cell. But Kessler didn't break the way Harry expected. He smiled instead, like a man who already knew how this was going to end. You think this is about me, Kessler said. This was never about me. Harry didn't answer. He didn't need to explain himself to a man who strangled someone with wire for missing a payment. He filed the case, wrote his report, and testified in front of a grand jury that indicted Kessler on first-degree murder. Case closed. Or so Harry thought. For days after the indictment, 2 men in suits Harry didn't recognize walked into the precinct and asked for him by name. Internal Affairs. We need you to come with us, one of them said. For what? The Kessler case. Harry followed them into a room he'd been in 100 times before, except this time he wasn't the one asking the questions. Where were you the night of the murder, before the call came in? The investigator asked. Working a different case. Why? Because your fingerprints are on the murder weapon. The room went quiet in a way Harry hadn't felt in years. Not the quiet of a stakeout. The quiet of a trap closing. That's impossible, Harry said. I never touched that garrote until it was bagged as evidence. According to forensics, your prints are underneath the blood, not on top of it. Which means you touched it before the murder happened. Harry stared at the man across the table like he was watching his own career get buried in real time. Somebody's lying, Harry said. That's what we're trying to figure out. Harry Callahan had spent 2 decades putting men behind bars using exactly this kind of evidence, clean, cold, undeniable. Now it was aimed at him, and for the first time in his career, he understood exactly how it felt to be on the other side of the interrogation table, watching a story get built around you piece by piece whether it was true or not. He was suspended that afternoon. No badge. No weapon. No case file. Just a letter telling him to stay away from the department until further notice. Harry didn't go home. He drove straight to the evidence locker and asked to see the garrote himself. You know I can't let you touch that, the property clerk said. Not with a suspension on your file. I don't need to touch it, Harry said. I need to see the tag. The clerk slid the file across without a word, because even suspended, Harry Callahan wasn't someone people said no to twice. The chain of custody had 4 names on it. 3 Harry recognized. The 4th belonged to a lab technician named Delgado, someone Harry had never worked with, never heard of, and had absolutely no reason to trust. That night, Harry sat alone in his apartment with a glass he didn't drink and a case file he wasn't supposed to have, and he asked himself the only question that mattered. Who benefits if I go down for this? The answer came to him around 2 in the morning, and it wasn't Kessler's face he saw. It was somebody standing behind Kessler the whole time, someone who needed the loan shark free and Harry gone, in that exact order. The next morning, Harry went looking for Torres, the young detective who'd worked the original scene with him. "You believe I did this?" Harry asked him straight, no preamble. Torres hesitated just long enough for Harry to notice. "I believe the evidence," Torres said. "I don't know what to believe about you." "Then help me find out who planted it." Torres looked around the parking garage like he expected someone to be listening, and in this city, lately, that wasn't paranoia. That was just good instinct. "There's a rumor going around," Torres said quietly. "That Kessler's lawyer had a meeting with someone from the DA's office before your prints ever showed up in the file." "Who?" "I don't have a name yet. But I know someone wanted this case to disappear, and framing you was the fastest way to make that happen. No cop testifies credibly against a killer once he's the one under investigation." That was the moment Harry understood the real shape of what was happening to him. This wasn't about punishing him for something he did. It was about erasing his testimony so Kessler could walk. Harry Callahan wasn't just being framed for a murder. He was being framed to protect the actual murderer he'd already caught. Harry went to Kessler's arraignment anyway, suspension or not, and sat 3 rows back, watching the man he'd arrested smile at his own lawyer like they'd already won. Kessler's attorney stood and made a motion Harry had heard 100 times from the other side of the courtroom, except this time it was aimed directly at him. "Your Honor, the arresting officer in this case is currently the subject of an active internal investigation regarding evidence tampering. We move that his testimony be considered compromised, and that the charges against my client be reconsidered in light of this conflict." The judge didn't rule immediately, but Harry could read a courtroom the way other men read a newspaper, and he knew exactly which way this was leaning. Outside on the courthouse steps, Harry lit a cigarette he didn't really want and let the anger sit in his chest instead of his hands, because for once in his life, throwing a punch wasn't going to fix anything. A voice behind him said, "You look like a man who just watched his own case get stolen." Harry turned. It was Delgado, the lab tech whose name was on the evidence chain, standing there like he had every right to be there. "You put my prints on that file," Harry said. It wasn't a question. Delgado's face didn't change, but his eyes did. "I ran the tests exactly the way I was told to run them," Delgado said. "By who?" "Somebody who doesn't like being asked that question twice." Harry stepped closer, close enough that Delgado's calm started to crack around the edges. "Give me a name," Harry said, "or I promise you, whatever happens to me because of this, happens to you worse." Delgado's hands were shaking now. "Assistant DA Whitfield. He came to the lab personally. Told me the case needed a different outcome. I didn't ask why. I just did what I was told." Harry had prosecuted alongside Whitfield for years. Shared coffee with him. Trusted his signature on warrants Harry's whole career depended on. Why would an assistant DA want a lone shark walking free? Harry asked. Delgado swallowed hard. Because Kessler doesn't just break legs for missed payments. He collects for people higher up the chain. People who fund campaigns. People Whitfield answers to. Harry finally had the shape of it. Kessler wasn't just a killer. He was a debt collector for men who never got their hands dirty, and Whitfield was protecting the machine, not the man. Before Harry could act on any of it, Delgado disappeared. Harry went to the lab the next morning to get a signed statement, something official, something internal affairs couldn't wave away as a scared man talking under pressure. But Delgado's desk was empty. His supervisor said he'd called in sick. His apartment, when Harry drove out there himself, was empty too, closet cleaned out, mail piling up on the floor like nobody had touched it in 2 days. "He's not sick," Harry said out loud to nobody. "He's gone." Harry sat in his car outside that apartment for 20 minutes, running through every version of what could have happened, and none of them were good. A man scared enough to name an assistant DA out loud on a courthouse sidewalk was a man who understood exactly what he was risking. If Whitfield had gotten to him first, Harry's only witness wasn't just missing. He might already be another name on a coroner's table, the same way the man Kessler had strangled with a garrote had ended up on one. Harry called in a favor from a beat cop who owed him from years back, had the man quietly check hospitals, morgues, bus stations, anywhere a frightened lab tech might surface. Nothing came back for 6 hours. Then, just after dark, the beat cop called with an address. A motel off the interstate, cash paid, no name on the register that matched, but a description that matched Delgado close enough. Harry didn't call it in. He drove there himself. The room was on the second floor, curtains drawn, television on loud enough to cover the sound of anyone listening at the door. Harry knocked twice, said nothing, and waited. "Who is it?" Delgado's voice said from inside, thin and unsteady. "You know who it is." The door opened a crack, chain still latched, one eye visible in the gap. "You shouldn't have come here," Delgado said. "If they know you found me." "Nobody followed me," Harry said. "Let me in before somebody does." Delgado unlatched the door with hands that hadn't stopped shaking since the courthouse steps. Inside, the room was a mess of fast food wrappers and a duffel bag half-packed, like a man who couldn't decide whether he was running towards safety or just running. "Whitfield's people came to my building last night," Delgado said. "Didn't say anything. Just sat outside in a car for 2 hours. I climbed out the fire escape." "Then you're not going back to that lab, and you're not testifying alone," Harry said. "You're coming with me, and you're putting everything you told me on paper, tonight, in front of a witness who isn't me." "Why not you?" "Because I'm the accused. My word isn't worth anything in this until yours backs it up in ink." Harry drove Delgado to Torres's apartment instead of the precinct, figuring correctly that whoever inside internal affairs had let Harry's suspension move so fast wasn't someone he could trust with a witness this fragile. Torres took the statement himself, notarized, signed, sealed, the kind of paper trail that couldn't quietly disappear into a drawer the way Harry's fingerprints had been quietly planted into one. By midnight, Harry had what he needed. Not just Whitfield's name spoken out loud on a sidewalk, but a written, witnessed account of exactly how the fingerprints found their way onto that garrote and exactly who had ordered it done. Harry went to Internal Affairs with Delgado's statement that same afternoon, but the investigator who'd suspended him barely looked up from his desk. "A scared lab tech changing his story under pressure from the man he's accusing isn't evidence, Callahan. It's a liability." "Then get me something that is evidence." "You're suspended. You don't get to investigate your own case." Harry walked out of that office knowing exactly what that meant. If he wanted the truth, nobody in that building was going to hand it to him. He was going to have to take it. That night, Harry broke into Whitfield's office the way he'd broken into 100 criminals' hideouts over the years, except this time the badge in his pocket wasn't active, and if he got caught, there'd be no department left standing behind him. The file he found in Whitfield's locked drawer wasn't labeled Kessler. It was labeled with a dozen other names, other cases, other cops, going back 6 years, every single one collapsed the same way Harry's was collapsing now. Solid arrests, sudden contamination, sudden doubt, sudden collapse. Harry wasn't the first cop Whitfield had done this to. He was just the latest. Harry photographed every page with a small camera he kept in his coat, and as he was closing the drawer, the office door opened behind him. Whitfield stood in the doorway, not shocked, not scared. Almost amused. "I wondered how long it would take you," Whitfield said. "You framed 6 cops to keep Kessler's operation running. I protected an arrangement that keeps a lot of money moving in this city, Callahan. You were never supposed to be smart enough to survive it." "Wrong guess." Whitfield's hand moved toward the phone on his desk. "One call, and Internal Affairs finds you breaking into a district attorney's office. That ends whatever's left of your career permanently." Harry didn't move for the gun he wasn't carrying. He didn't need to. "Make the call," Harry said. "By the time they get here, I'll already have given copies of that file to 3 reporters who'd love to know why a man with your salary owns a house in Sausalito he can't explain." Whitfield's hand stopped halfway to the phone. "You're bluffing. You've met me twice a week for 4 years, Harry said. You know I'm not." The silence between them lasted long enough for Whitfield's whole plan to fall apart in his own head, piece by piece, the same way Kessler's case had fallen apart in Harry's a week earlier. "What do you want?" Whitfield finally said. "Kessler back in a cell. My name clean. And your resignation on the DA's desk by Monday morning. And if I say no, then everyone in this city finds out exactly what kind of justice you've been selling." Whitfield sat down slowly, like the weight of the last 6 years had finally caught up with his knees. 2 days later, Harry's suspension was lifted quietly, without an apology, the way the department always handled its own mistakes. Delgado's original statement was reopened. The lab results were retested by an outside agency and came back exactly the way Harry always knew they would, no trace of his prints anywhere near that garrote before the murder. Kessler's deal collapsed the moment his protection disappeared, and this time there was no lawyer clever enough to save him from the evidence Harry had gathered honestly the first time around. Whitfield resigned that Monday, exactly like Harry had asked. No press conference. No confession. Just an empty office and a name quietly removed from every case file it had ever touched. Harry stood outside the courthouse the day Kessler was finally sentenced, and Torres walked up beside him, badge back on his chest like nothing had happened, even though both of them knew everything had. "You could have burned the whole department down proving your case," Torres said. "Reporters, headlines, an inquiry into everyone Whitfield touched. Why didn't you?" Harry lit a cigarette and watched the courthouse doors close on Kessler for the last time. "Because the badge doesn't work if people stop trusting it," Harry said. "I don't need this city to know I was framed. I just need the ones who did it to know I wasn't going anywhere." Torres nodded slowly, understanding something about Harry Callahan that no case file would ever fully explain. "There were 6 of us before you," Torres said. "Cops Whitfield buried the same way. None of them fought back." Harry looked at him. "Then somebody should go find out what happened to their cases too." "You offering?" Harry didn't answer right away. He just flicked the cigarette into the gutter and started walking toward his car, because in this city, one closed case never really meant the story was over. It just meant the next one was already waiting.